Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly show with not Jimmy and Joe, with Joe and Jimmy. Joe and Jimmy. And happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
You're close.
Siete de Mayo.
I was just going to say that too.
Siete de Mayo. So,
right.
Joe, say siete. I just want to hear you say siete.
Siete.
Good job.
How about that? That's pretty good, right? That's right. I feel pretty good.
That's all right.
You're repping my Fall Mart today. Look at this. Repping my Fall Mart people. Go Fall Mart. Local business, people. Local business. Right. 3 bars, good. 2 gas stations, 1 school. This is one of the bad gas stations.
I've been there. I've been to
Yes, you have.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there.
That's
I can
exactly
actually
right.
say that. I have purchased a snack from the local mart there in Fall Creek.
Yes,
Wisconsin,
you have.
people.
Yes, you have, man.
But good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. It's been exciting week. Not a long week, but a good week. Again, seriously. Celebrating my people this week. I did a little show on Wednesday, so that was good, even though it was a day early. But I love all the May the 4th be with you little memes that are going around. That's kind of nice. I'm not even a Star Wars fan, but I enjoy those as well.
What?
So, I know.
You're not a Star Wars fan?
I know. I should have said that.
And we're friends.
If my son watches this recording, he's not going to be happy because my son is like a crazy, Star Wars geek.
Well, that means he's a good person,
That's right. And it's funny too, because I remember seeing the original Star Wars. I shouldn't say that because people are going to call lies on me here. But I believe it was in the 70s, right? Because I think I remember actually going to it. But,
Yep.
And I remember thinking it was kind of cool, but I never got hooked on it like a lot of people got hooked on it. So
did you go for college? Did you go for your college graduation?
What's that?
To go see Star Wars?
Oh, no. No. I thought just for a second you threw me off because I'm like, is he talking about Marissa? Because my daughter's graduation's right this week coming up, right? She's graduating
from late 70s.
University of Iowa, Joe.
Oh, fantastic.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. That's right. That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't know if that was, it's late 70s. I was thinking that must have been either your college graduation or graduate degree graduation. I don't know, whatever it was.
That was kind of funny, Joe. Hey, Joe, do me a favor. Look at the screen. Look at the screen just for a second really closely. You see what it says? It says Jimmy Casas. It doesn't say Jeff Zoll. Okay?
That's all true.
Then that would be true.
That's true.
70s, college,
whatever it takes.
So
whatever it is. So how you been? How was it? So what did you where were you at this week?
I was with my people in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Bismarck.
It's so amazing. Right. It's really interesting, right? How we can get certain biases about communities because you never go there, right? But man, if you've never been to Bismarck, North Dakota, if you are a school that's looking to innovate, if you're looking at a school that's looking just at organizational and systemic structures, that's the place, man. It's got so much great stuff going on there. So they're good people, but just really very I don't know, maybe very intentional and just the way they think, right? The way they think about organizational structures and they got really good systems in place, but they just got really good schools. And obviously when you have really good schools, that means one thing, that means you have really good leaders.
Right.
Really hard to find a really good school and then see that there's an ineffective leader in that school, right? So there's a lot of people share oftentimes that the greatest impact that happens in a school when it comes to student achievement is in the classroom. And again, I'm going to go, I don't know when it was, but I believe it was the Wallace Foundation that came out with that research, way back when, maybe again in the 70s or so, maybe even the 80s. But I know that came out, but I know there's also a lot of talk right now and the impact that school leadership has on student achievement also. And I think it kind of goes back and forth. I'm not sure one is more important than the other. They're both equally important in my eyes. So. But anyway, so super excited. And I'm a little sad because I've been up there all year. And so this is the last time for this year that I'll see them. So I'll miss them. But I'll be honest, there were a few tears shed yesterday, Joe. That's kind of cool, right? A few tears shed. Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's just the impact that you have and the impact that we all like when we go and do some of the stuff that we can connect and really kind of dive deeper into into the mechanics of leadership sometimes too, where you don't even think about it. Like you just lead and you go and you don't really think about the mechanics of how intentional you are about the work and what that really looks like and everything. So being able to break that down with a group over the course of time, I mean, it's going to get emotional when you're all done with it because they've seen growth in the work that they've done too, which is really, the reason that we try to get people more involved.
Yeah, and the thing that's really cool about it too, and this is just a good reminder. I mean, when you talk about school culture and campus cultures, but a couple things. Number one, they just always make me feel like I'm part of the staff. I mean, that's what's kind
Yeah.
of interesting, right? Like every time I go there, I feel like, I kind of joke around. I feel like I kind of own the place, only in the sense that they make me feel like a part of the staff, right? Like I feel comfortable walking into schools and walking to central office, and it's everybody, that is important when you think about how do we create a sense of belonging, right? I'm a guest coming into that district, yet they make me feel like I'm part of the staff.
Right.
Now think about that for all of us school leaders right now. When guests walk into our school, how do we make them feel like, yeah, this is like my home. This is, my kids go to school here. I feel like I'm a part of the staff here. So that's really awesome. That's a great feeling. The other thing I love about it is how they view so many different people. They do a great job of really, really building capacity, leadership capacity. I mean, it's one thing to be a leadership coach and work for principals, but they allow me to work with everybody from secretaries to they have an indigenous coordinator. I work with assistant principals. I work with deans. We do workshops. We do individual meetings. We do sessions on those things we just talked about, right? How we're implementing processes and structures and frameworks into our schools. So I can't say enough awesome things about them. Just very, very blessed. And, it's amazing. You walk into a district, 2 years ago and today it's almost like, they're part of what you've been doing for a long time. And it makes me feel good. And hopefully I've added something. I don't know what, but hopefully I've contributed in something. So,
well, just the opportunity to connect and, have them take a look at what not only their organizational structure, but just the interactions that they have and what those really look like. And I know what you bring when you come there, and I think it's very special. But at the same time, when you get a chance to just sit down with a group of people that you're trying to lead with together and talk about what that really looks like over the course of time, then you're all going to get better along the way, because you're really that's that whole mentality of you learn by doing, but you learn more by reflecting on what you've done. And how often do we get a chance to actually do that? Is to like learn by reflecting on what we've done and move forward. I don't think we do that nearly as much as we should, but it seems like when you're in the rat race of getting from day to day to hour, it becomes something else to do as opposed to something that's intentionally done. And then when it's something else to do, we already can't find enough room on the plate that's full to actually reflect on the practice.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you think about it again, and this is a good reminder for all of us, and the vulnerability that it takes to allow an outsider to come in and observe you and give you feedback as a school leader. I mean, just how powerful that is. And it tells you, again, when we talk about people wanting to be better, how awesome is that the school leaders are saying, yes, come in and coach me. Yes, come in and work with me. And what that says to your staff, right? I mean, here we are, we're trying to create these communities in our schools where teachers feel comfortable with other teachers coming into their classrooms. We're talking about instructional rounds. We're talking about conversation that's truly focused on instruction or assessment or curriculum or just everything that goes in that to go into a classroom. Well, by a principal allowing someone to come into their building and do the same thing, I can't tell you how powerful that is. And it's a reminder how much people want to be really great at what they do. And, we've talked about this before, you go into the profession, you literally, someone hands you the keys and say, good luck.
Right.
And yet then we're turning around, we're hypercritical of school leaders and we know how difficult the job is. So, but anyway, it was an amazing, another amazing year up there. I'm looking forward to see what happens next year. I know, I want to go back. I know they want me to come back, but we'll see if we can fit it all into the schedule. There's so much going on, as you well know. And there's so many places, you want to try to impact. And so,
right.
But hey, good morning, Dr. Amy Matthews Bettis. Good morning. Good morning. And good morning, Thomas. Thank you for joining us this morning. And thank you for jumping on here this morning. It is bright and early on a Saturday morning. If you have a topic of conversation, drop it in the chat box. Drop it in the chat box. Joe and I will try to give you some sort of opinion that hopefully makes sense. But remember, it doesn't cost you anything for the advice. And I'm not saying that we actually even know what we're
you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for. That's right. So, and Kim, good morning as well. Thank you for joining us in here. So,
morning, Kim.
Drop your problems of practice. Drop what you're thinking about, any questions you have, and we're looking forward to it. And Joe and I will start, kind of like Seinfeld. Let's just start talking about
Just talk about nothing. Just
and
talk
see
about
where it leads
nothing.
to.
That's exactly right.
See
And
where it leads to. So
yeah,
let's see what Amy says. Amy says that easy to think that reflection is something that happens in natural moments of silence and peace. Hey,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Yep. That's just that idea of being intentional, right? Amy being intentional. And, there is something to say about just taking time to slow down and pause and think and process. And not just for us, but how important it is for us. One of the things is one of our jobs as school leaders is think about how often we have to go have a conversation with someone in our buildings. Either that conversation is to say, hey, kudos, congratulations, thank you. Maybe it's some sort of gratitude. But we also know the reality of school leadership. We also sometimes have to go have conversations with people that are underperforming.
Right.
Underperforming. Joe, right over here to my board, to my left on the board, I have these words that says, no opt-out allowed, right? And it's interesting, right? Just again, the complexities of school culture when as a leader, we have, and maybe here's a question for the audience. Reflect just for a second. How do you manage people in your organization that are underperforming? And think about how do we have the conversation with someone who is not doing what they're supposed to be doing? In other words, they're opting out. And how do we have that conversation without hurting our culture? That'd be number one, right? And number two is, if we really are honest, how often are we avoiding that conversation? Then the question comes down to is, why do we avoid the conversation? And if we're speaking truth here, if we really are, and I'd like to think we do, Joe, and that's one of the things I want to be able to do is that we speak truth. And that is sometimes we as school leaders, and I know I did this, so I can speak at least for myself, is that there were times I didn't have the conversation because I didn't want to hurt my culture. I was worried that if I did something or said the wrong thing, that would spread around the building and get back and people would, then it would cause some sort of morale issue in my building, right? Sometimes people that are opting out sometimes have, let's just say, maybe they have leverage in the school. If you're a new principal coming into a building, how are you going to have a difficult conversation with someone who's been in the building already for a long time? Maybe they have leverage. Maybe they have clout in the building, and that can be quickly used in their favor and used against you. And so people hesitate for that, right? And I think that's one of the hardest things about leadership is no one teaches us how to have that conversation. And so that's where I have a lot of empathy for leaders, because I do sometimes think it's very complex. It's not just, just do this or just do that. And no matter how many times you can coach someone to have a difficult conversation, the reality is the variable that you're dealing with is different. And so even when you think you have it with one individual and it is somewhat successful, you go try it with someone else and it goes south in 3 seconds. And so I think that's what I continue to see. Joe, if I had to say something that I see constantly in every building I go to, is the challenges that school leaders are having, how to deal with people that are not doing their jobs. And sometimes we begin just to talk about them and how they're not doing their jobs, but we're not sure what to do with them when they're not doing their jobs, right? And that's the hard part. So that's kind of the truth. And we talked a little bit about that last week. So again, that's why relationships are so important. Understanding the why people why people aren't performing the way we want them to perform, and the importance of clarity and how important that is. And that's probably something I see often too, because that clarity is creating all sorts of issues for people. So Joe, thoughts on that or anything else you want to talk about? I don't know why I just hop on that little tangent, but that was on in my mind. So thank you for allowing me to share.
I appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more. And I find myself doing it more often than I care to admit, to be really honest. I think it's one of my biggest downfalls, honestly, is that it's tough to have so when I go through this process of what does it really look like, one of the things that I first start to think about when somebody's not performing at a level at which they expect, or we expect as an organization, is, have we defined what that expectation is? And if we haven't, then it's on us. If we're expecting someone to be at a level that we feel like they should be at, yet we haven't explained what that level actually looks like, and now we're expecting something that they don't know about, now we're dancing around. And that doesn't help anybody at all. The thing that's really interesting about those tough conversations is when I don't have the tough conversations because I'm afraid of what it's going to do to the culture of the building, I'm actually probably hurting the culture of the building more than I'm helping it to begin with. Because as Susan actually just said in the chat, like, everybody knows if somebody's not at a certain level. And if it doesn't get addressed, then it becomes okay to be there. And then the people who are working so hard at the work that they're doing, then they feel like they're not, like, why should I work this hard if people who are not working as hard are allowed to just continue to do that, right? So you're essentially taking the people that are going above and beyond and devaluing them by not addressing the issue that's going on within the context of people that aren't performing at a level. So I think about it two ways. I think about it that way, right? Like, we want to make sure that we address it because that values the people who are doing great things. But the other side of it is true as well. If the person who we believe is underperforming because they believe that that's the expectation, that's the level, and that's what they've been taught, and that's what they've been told, and they're just doing what they've always done, kind of thing, then we have to address it in a way that values where they start. Otherwise, if we're expecting them to be at a level that we have not defined for them, then that's on us as the leader. So one of the things that I think is really important about that conversation is making sure that you get like a baseline of what they believe is going well in the work that they're doing. And maybe they see it too. Maybe they see like they've fallen into a little bit of a rut in terms of the work. Maybe there's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe it's just one of those things that, they need some, they need some help, they need some resources, they need some inspiration, whatever it is. We're there to help people, not knock them down. And if we go right to the idea that, well, we have to address the underperforming, person or department or whatever, yet we haven't defined it, right? And we haven't allowed them to have a conversation about where they believe that they are in the work, then we're essentially just kind of like throwing darts at targets that aren't really up there, or they're moving all the time, and that's not fair to them either. So if we value people, the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we value where they start and have a real honest conversation with them. But if we don't have that real honest conversation, it devalues the other people in the building who are doing incredible things and working way beyond their own time and resources to try to make a difference. And if we allow people to not work at that level or be at that level where we're really leaning into each other, then it devalues the people that are doing that great work.
Joe, I almost wanted to, I felt like I was listening and I wanted to throw something in the chat while you were talking right there. So good job there.
Yeah, do it.
But seriously, I just want to say it again, because I think that's such a powerful point you just made, and I don't want people to miss it. And that is that we have to and remember to value people at where they start, right? Yeah. And then as well as where do they want to go, right? And so that's that relationship piece again. And so I'm looking at this comment, Susan. You got me thinking, Susan. I'm sitting here, and my immediate thought is I wanted to push back a little bit, but then I'm thinking about it, right? I'm processing it, because here's the thing: I do agree with what you say, and I think I know what you're saying, and I agree with it. But there's this other little piece, because it's personal to me, and that's again, here's another example why it's so hard, because everybody has a story, right? And so that story that we all have is based on some sort of past experience that we've had. So I'm just going to be really honest here just for a second. I'm going to try to touch on Susan's point, but this is what I was thinking, Susan, about your comment. Number one, I don't think that the conversation hurts the school culture. I agree with that. We don't want it to, but it can. It can. And I'll come back to how that can happen, because I'm telling you from my own personal experience of how I did that. And the staff knows about those people who are opting out and want you to address it. And I believe that is true, but which people want me to address it? So our best people, right? Our experience is often that they want us to address it. But what about others who are behaving in similar ways? Do they want us to address it, right? Because that means part of that might be coming back to them to have to be addressed as well. And so when I think about that comment, in general, I agree with it, but I then think about this. Maybe it's not the fact that we should address it or that we have to address it, but it's how we're addressing it. So I think it's how we address it will determine whether or not it hurts the culture or doesn't hurt the culture. That's one thing. And then the other part is this. So, and this is why it's so difficult again. I'm just having this memory right now. So when I first went into principalship, I had an experience where my HR director, see if any principals ever had this experience, and I'm just being honest here with if they're teachers in the thread, so you sometimes understand how difficult this works, or it is that you come into the profession and you get hired, and part of an initial meeting for me at least was with my HR director, who started sharing with me examples of issues of people in our building that weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she basically said to me, I need you to do something about that. And when I clarified, when you say you want me to do something about that, what does that mean? The comment was, you need to get rid of them. Now think about that just for a second. If you're a new administrator coming into an organization and your directive is already get rid of these people, that means these people have had a history with these individuals. And part of their frustration comes from maybe, just maybe, that your predecessor never addressed the issue with these people. And it's creating all sorts of morale issues for our building and our culture. And so think about that. Now an administrator has to navigate that. And so I soldiered up. I did what I was asked to do. And I thought, well, honestly, these people know these people are ineffective, that they're negative, that they're not doing their job. And it's actually making us all look bad. And I felt these people would appreciate that our best people would appreciate the fact that I did that. Well, guess what? They kind of did. But here's the thing that I never saw. And this is why I love leadership, because it's the ability to see the potential undercurrent that came from my behavior that I couldn't see at the time. And that is this. Yes, people expected me to do something about it. The best people were, thank you for finally doing something about it. But the reality is that there were a lot of individuals in the organization that when that happened, you know what they actually said? Well, I wonder if that will be me next if I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing. And just like that, I created this little undercurrent of fear amongst those who thought, well, maybe I'll be next if I don't do what Jimmy expects me to do. And I think that's the reality of what a lot of our leaders are dealing with in the buildings today. And I've had these conversations with people, and I've shared that story with other principals because that's how complex it is. And so my point is, thank you, leaders, for the work you do. I agree with you, Susan. I think we need to take that on, and we cannot allow people to opt out. We should not allow people to underperform. But remember, let's find out why they aren't, and how we do it matters. And how we do it should, in my opinion, align with the values, because we should always model those values of dignity and respect and compassion and empathy, because that's how we expect our teachers to work with our children when they're in the classroom and they're underperforming. So
tell me about this, Jamie. What if your HR director would have said to you, I just need you to fix the problem, and left it at that, and not had said you need to get rid of them? But what if they would have said, I need you to fix the problem? Would you have felt more empowered to say, okay, the people who we're talking about are going to get better? I can promise you that. And then just leave it at that. And then you can value where they start. Now, if they, again, like you had mentioned, if they opt out after you have the initial conversation and say, hey, where are you at? How are things going for you? What do you want to get better at? Are there anything that, what things do you do well? And talk about and move them from that spot. And then if you see some growth and progress at all, why, you know what I mean? If the end game is already set before you walk in, you got nothing you can do at that point. Like you're not even looking for good stuff in what they do at that point either, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm listening to your question. I'm looking at Don's question. Thank you, Don, for the question, because it is a really good question. It's a fair question. I'm going to try to answer it here in a second. And then I'm looking at Susan's response here as well. So thank you. And thank you all for your comments, right? And this is part of why we do this, right? Are people actually having these conversations? And if we are, we're just kind of like having them behind closed doors in our office. And that doesn't help anybody, right? And so how do we, because we're all dealing with the same issues, right? We know that the issues are the same almost at every building we go into. So there's a couple things. Again, to answer your question, Joe, I would say this: how I would have answered that question at 26 and how I answer that question as a 22-year veteran would be completely different, right? Because I just have experience. hopefully I've matured, I've learned, I've grown. And again,
and you have clout.
And have clout. You have there's all these other variables that come into play. And so I'd answer that differently. But I think that to answer your question is definitely the way that the HR director approached me about it certainly would have impacted the way I would have responded. However, having said that, if I'm being really honest, I don't think I would have known either way, to be honest with you, Joe. I mean,
What do you mean?
I'm 26 years old. And I'm walking into a building and I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have that skill set. I don't know what I would have done. And I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have done anything. I probably, I don't know. I'm trying to be really honest. It's hard to think about that again. But yeah, I mean, I think the real answer is I'm not sure I would even have known either way, buddy, to be honest with you. And so
when it comes with the, obviously with the experience and having the tough conversations when you have to have the tough conversations. But I think if we can, especially again, this is why we do stuff like this, because there are a lot of new leaders out there, and both of us would have been in the same spot at 26 or 29 when I got my first principal job and thought to myself, I'm just going to make everybody feel great. It's going to be wonderful. This culture is going to be great. We're just going to have a great time. It's going to be great. I can't wait. It's going to be great. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to give away a bunch of snacks. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be wonderful, right? But I had no idea how to actually lead. I just had an idea of how to, get people excited and bring a lot of energy. Well, guess what? Not everybody wants that. So I think that, obviously it comes over time. But I guess if I would have been more reflective in my first year about practice, systems, and process versus excitement and energy and snacks, I think I would have probably been a much better. I think it would have been much better, but it wouldn't have been me at the time. I mean, we got to allow ourselves to grow as leaders too. You know what I mean? Like, give yourself a little grace in terms of what that looks like. So I don't know. When you're a new leader in a situation, and I was talking to some aspiring leaders this week. I was talking to a group of, I was talking to business officials this week, and like new business official people. Like, there is so much turnover in every organization, in every department of every organization. I was with business officials this week in Washington State, and there was 200. It was about 700 people that were at this conference, right? 700 business officials. 250 of them were new, and it was their first time at that conference. 250, right? And so we have to give ourselves a little grace in terms of how we start our leadership journey. And this is just a time to see if we can kind of impact that a little bit and make you reflect a little bit more as you go into it, knowing that we don't have all the answers, but at the same time, that's okay. The only problem with not having all the answers when you start in a leadership position is pretending that you have all the answers and you start in a leadership position, right? That's the only way that you get into trouble. Because if you walk in and say you know everything when everybody in that room knows you don't, you lost every piece of momentum that you have. If you go in there and say, we're going to do the best we can together and try to move forward together, and I'm going to help the best that I can, but I'm going to listen first, and then we're going to act. Like, that's different, because now you can move everybody forward together without knowing, like, well, yeah, I know exactly how that's going to go. Well, you don't know. You have no idea.
Yeah. I love the reflective thoughts. People are really thinking right now, and I like that. You can see by the comments that are going in here. Hey, if anybody wants to jump into the studio with us and have this conversation, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I know sometimes it's a little, maybe a little difficult or challenging because you're like, well, but maybe you can talk about a prior experience or something rather than what's going on currently in your building, so we understand the challenges there as well. So, but certainly would love to jump you in here. We'll throw the link in here in case you're interested in jumping in. We'd love to have you join us. Joe, you said something there just a second ago and made me start thinking, and it's exactly right? Because when we come into the buildings, again, here's typically what's happening, right? You have a teacher moving from teacher to, I'm going to go to the principalship, teacher to principal. Although that happens at a secondary level, it doesn't happen as frequently as it does in the elementary level, in my experience. In other words, I see more of that happening from an elementary teacher right to a principalship in the elementary than I do from a high school teacher to a high school principalship, right? There's this sequential nature of dean, AP, or whatever to a principalship, okay? So when you think about it that way, it happens because if you're a teacher and you become a principal, as you were a teacher, you saw these things and that were affecting your building, whether it was culturally, whether it was lack of clarity, the organizational, the way the building was organized or how it functioned or how it ran. And so we go into this position, and that's one avenue. If you're a high school person or middle school person, let's say you went through the level from teacher to AP and the AP to principal. Well, as an AP, let's be honest, what are you constantly dealing with? Behavior, management. And that transition from teacher to principal or AP to principal becomes about management, right? It's more about managing because you're organizing, and there's not necessarily an understanding of how then do I lead, right? And what does that even mean? And it doesn't mean that managing is a bad thing, because let's be honest, you got to be able to manage your building, your organization also, right? If you can't manage, 100%. That means you're unorganized. You're going to struggle here because you're going to lose credibility, because the place is just going to be dysfunctional in many ways, right?
It's harder to lead if you can't manage. It's harder to lead if you can't manage.
Right. So, there are times we have to manage, there are times we have to lead, and it's the ebb and flow of doing both. But we cannot forget the leading aspect of it, right? The being able to lead. And we also know there's a lot of people who have vision. They have all these ideas, and hell, they can't see past Tuesday, right? And so they have these other issues, right? And so that's the most effective leaders that are able to ebb and flow back and forth between that leading and management. So I was thinking about that, but then I want to answer the question here, because I don't want you to think that I'm avoiding that. And unfortunately, I'm going to probably be jiggling my computer here. So I apologize for that, because I'm on my mouse here. But Don, so here's what I would say. Knowing now what I know now, how would I have done that differently if an HR director came up to me and said that to me in the building today? I would say, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. Okay. And then I would get into question mode. Tell me more. What's been your experience? What's the frustration? What does it cause us? What's happening? What was
their reaction?
What have we done at this point? Right?
What was their reaction when you brought that to them?
Yeah. What support services have we put into place? There's all these different things, right? So definitely would manage that a lot differently now, because I think differently about it, right? Because remember, the way I think today is as a leader, and this is what I coach, is I try to help people see the potential undercurrent that's going to come. If I do this, where's it going to come at me? How's it going to hurt the culture and the morale? And because, again, to me, it is all about the culture morale, because I can't move an organization academically if our people are not in a good place, right? And that means if our people are not in a good place, they're probably not treating our children in a good way. And then they're not in a good place. And there's all this huge trickle-down effect. So that's what I would say today, Don. That would be the first step. And then the second step I would do is ask the HR director to give me some time to work with the individual. Give me some time to work with this individual. Okay, let me find out what's going on. Let me see what I can do. And then honestly, I wouldn't even go, Don. And here's a mistake I think I have made, and that is I would just go to the individuals that are having problems. I wouldn't do that anymore, because everybody knows that I'm only going to them and I'm not going to anybody else. And so in today's world, I'd go to everybody, right? I would talk to everybody first. And then, because when I do that, I would be able to identify with that individual, and I might ask that individual some different questions, but I would go to everybody. So let me give you an example to see if this makes sense, leaders. And for you principals, it's a good coaching strategy to help your assistant principals is, how many times have I seen an AP walk into a classroom, and I'm going to use the word pluck, but grab, call out a kid, bring them out in the hallway to talk to them, right? Or go in the classroom, and I always think, is there a better way? Is there a better way? And because here's the thing, when we go in there and walk up to a kid and just talk to that kid and then turn around and walk out, everybody knows you went in and talked to that kid. So why not, while we're in the room, let's just talk to all kids. Let's just go in there. I can talk to this kid. I can talk to this kid. I can talk to this kid. And if I needed to talk to this kid about, like, hey, stop by and see me later. We need to chat about a situation, right? Or I need to talk to you about an absence, or whatever happens to be the case. That to me is more effective. It's subtle, but the idea is I'm not going to just walk in and talk to the one kid I need to talk to because everybody knows I need to talk to the kid. And we all know what happens as soon as you walk out. What was that about? What do you want to talk to you about, right? And then it just creates a disruption. It creates, maybe for some kids, not all kids, but for some kids, it could create a little embarrassment or a little awkwardness or something. So that's the subtleness of it. And so my point is, yes, questions of the HR. Yes, ask for time to work with it and go back to the building and work with all teachers. And while I'm working with all teachers, then maybe I'll see what they're talking about. And then that's where I begin to understand well, how did this person land there? And then I would do everything I could to help that person be great, because Susan or Don in this case aligns with a core value. And that core value for me is be a merchant of hope, which means I believe everybody wants to be great at what they do. These people have lost their way just like I lost my way. So now it's personal to me because that's my story, which is why I see it differently today than I saw it back then.
Yeah, one of the things that
blah, blah, blah.
Well,
why am I talking 100 miles an hour, Joe? Am I on like 4 times right now? Am I on 4 times? Why am I talking 100 miles an hour?
I only listened to half of what you say anyway. So the half of the half that I was listening to, I'm kidding, man. So but here's one thing. When you were talking, I kind of like went like this at one point that you were talking. When you
I saw you. I was like, what was that about?
Right. Well, because I thought when you said you were going to go talk to everybody, I thought, well, I'm not going to go talk to everybody. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, and the way that I was taking that was like, if the analogy is like, if somebody is like can't park in the parking lot because they can't figure out where the lines are and get their car in between the lines, we're not going to send an email or have a conversation at a staff meeting with everybody saying, hey, we need to do a better job of parking as a group. Like we really struggle with parking. So can we please make sure that we park better when everybody knows it's the one dude that can't put the car between the lines, right? So now you've developed this whole other undercurrent that we're talking about. But the way that you said it, the way that when the clarification in that is you're going to talk to everybody. It was talking to everybody about where they're at, and then just you change up the conversation for the individual. Where that now, if do I have to go around and ask everybody how they're parking? No, but can I check with everybody, see how they're doing? And during the conversation, I got them there.
Hey, a little bit about Talk to me a little bit about exactly.
Is there something wrong with the rear view mirror? Is there something wrong? I mean, is it hard? You got low tire pressure and in the front left? Like, what do you got? Like, what's going on? Right? Like, just have a conversation about that.
Hey, Joe.
You know what I mean,
guess what? We got Josh.
Josh. My man, Josh. How you doing, boss?
Good morning. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Jimmy. I was just waking up and I got the notification. So make sure that you follow and subscribe so you can get the notification. And you know what? You stole all my thunder the last couple of seconds, but it's crucial. When we walk into new schools, hey, rookie in college, hey, rookie first year principal, just learn one thing. You have to have those awkward conversations, but create a positive climate to have those awkward conversations. Because if not, the person behind you has to start cleaning up what you left behind because you failed to do that. And that's not fair for the kids. That's not fair for the team members at the campus level. You have to have awkward conversations. And if you can't, then you should not be sitting in the chair. Because that creates a ripple effect throughout the community. Because then those kids go talk to their parents and they say how bad the things are. No, if the principal would have addressed it, if the administrative team would have addressed it, then you would have been okay and not allowing it to become toxic. So it's crucial. And I love what Jimmy just said right now. When you have those directives, those awkward conversations from central office, you have to say, what is your expectation? How are you going to be able to support me? Not only that, I need to do it with my vision and my tool set. You cannot just send me into battle by giving me your used weapons. I need to be able to bring to the table the ability to win people over and let them see it through my vision, through how I bring my tool set to the table. But the only thing that I would say that I don't think any of you mentioned right now is the problems in most schools are that administrators fail to have awkward conversations to individuals, and they send those blanket emails to everybody. Or at staff meetings, the person that sits in the back with their newspaper or making plays, they address the whole team because of that one person. And I don't believe that's right. And everyone wants it addressed. But just like Jimmy said, and like Todd Whitaker says, it's how you address the situation, because then they're going to be thinking, am I next?
Yeah.
Am I the next person? So I just wanted to add those 2 sets in regards to that. I just had to wake up and go, no, administrators all over the country, address your stuff, because it's not fair to the kids, to the teachers, and future administrators that will sit in your chair.
Yeah, I agree. Well said, Josh. Well, very well said.
Josh, it is good to see you, my friend from Tejas.
Josh, from the Lone Star State.
I just have one question before you get off this thread here. Let me ask you a question. Have you been to Bob's Steakhouse recently?
No, not recently.
Okay. Who has amazing food in Texas?
Bob's Steakhouse. You just said it. Hey, go to Bob Steakhouse if you're in Texas.
That's right.
Hey, we're advertising promoting Bob's Steakhouse. We'll let them know
That's
that.
right. We need sponsorship. Definitely sponsorship is going to follow for sure. Maybe not after they see this. They're like,
hey,
yeah,
Josh,
don't forget.
where the steak is good, but the bread was amazing.
It just kept coming. It just kept coming warm. But we digress.
Josh, thank you so much for jumping in here with us this morning. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it, my friend.
Great to see you guys.
God bless you, man.
Have a good day, Bob. Take care, man.
Take care.
He makes a good point, and it's like that's what we want to make sure that we understand. You know, you had mentioned, Jimmy, that I thought I kind of want to like revisit this piece where you're talking about how our best people want that stuff addressed, right? But at the same time, there are other people that might not want it addressed because it might be them next.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to unpack that a little bit because if we make decisions based on our best people, right, which we should, right, then how do we make sure? And if there's a group of people that think, well, I'm next, is that the worst thing in the world if the practice isn't productive for kids or the environment or their colleagues?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look at it. I mean, again, we have to remember, Josh comes on here, shares something, Joe says something, I share something, Amanda, Amy, Susan. This is why it's important, is because I'm not sure any of us have the right answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what we do is we all have a certain leadership style. And so within that style, I think two things happen. One is it allows us to have confidence in how we manage situations. And I think part of that over time is developed because we experience success with the way we manage and handle and address things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that begins to build this way that we begin to utilize these skills to get better results. Because I'm not sure we ever can fix anything. Okay. I don't even think it's my responsibility to fix anything. It's my responsibility to change me. If I change me, then hopefully over time I get better at it and I'll continue to get a better result. But I'm not sure I ever fix it, because I think if I think I fix it, then here's the danger. And again, this is just me thinking through this, is that if I think I fixed it and then the next time I go to use that strategy and it doesn't work, what I've learned is I had a tendency to want to blame them then. And that's not fair to them, because it's easier for me to do that, Joe, than to say, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do with that, right? Because now it comes back on me again. And so to me, that's how I see it. And I'm not saying that's how people all see it or should see it. That's just the way I see it. And so, but it makes sense to me, because to me, Joe, it always goes back to a set of values of what do I value? Am I who I say I am? And again, I did it for 12 years and I didn't do it like that. And I create all sorts of issues for myself. And it was easier for me to blame everybody else than it was to say, no, Jimmy, you just don't know how to deal with that person. You don't know what to do with them, right? So I'll just say, well, they're negative and they need to do this. So that's the first way I see it from. So the reason I share that with you is because for you to understand why I see it that way, because to me, I don't want to create a culture of fear. There would be other people over here who say, well, that's the way it should be done. That's the way I've done. I've gotten good results. And I would say, well, then keep doing it that way, right? I'm not saying for you to do it my way. I'm just saying that in my experience, I want to be true to who I am, but I always think there's still a better way, because here's my point. I believe that I can still find a better way, that I could still address that situation and remove that fear, that little bit of fear. And here's why, because remember, I just told you, I created unintentionally a culture of fear. And if someone says, well, is that a bad thing? You know what I'm going to say? Well, it was for me. It was for me. And I don't want to go there again, because I know what it did to me. And we always say this, Joe, the emotional toll that this job will take on you, what it does to you and messes with you, especially if you start thinking, because remember, there's a lot of factors that come in that. You're 26, Jimmy. You're a Latino, Jimmy. Don't screw this up, Jimmy, right? Jimmy, you've always been successful, and now all of a sudden you're not so successful, dude. Maybe you're not as good as you thought you were, and all of a sudden it starts messing with you inside your head. And then you start hesitating, right? And then you literally start having anxiety. And that's what happens to our leaders, because we're asking them to do so much. And I just had a conversation with a group of staff members here recently. And I said, listen, you want to be critical of your principal, but there are 150 of you, and this principal has to learn 150 personalities, 150 experiences, and all these things that you've lived in your life, and you have to learn one. You have to learn one. And yet you don't even want to do that, but you expect the principal to learn of 150 different personalities and how they lead and how they act. And that's the unfairness of the job that I think lands on us sometimes. So, I get fired up because I am a freaking principal supporter because I know how hard the job is, but I can also be, hopefully with love and good intentions, I'm also a critique of them because gosh darn it, we also have to be better. We can't just say, and start complaining. No, I signed up for this job.
Right.
I know it's going to be a hard job.
I agree with that.
I got to get better. Right. And so it's always that balance. I just kind of go back and forth between it. So again, not everybody agrees with me, and promise you, you shouldn't all agree.
Yeah. No, I'm not asking for that.
Yeah, I always said to people, look, it's not my job to change anybody's behavior. Not anybody on the STRED, not even in school, not anyone as a principal. That's your job to change your behavior. What I try to do today, because remember, I already tried to do that. And when I try to change people's behavior, how did I do it? Yeah, I'll tell you how I did it. I wrote them up. I gave them a warning, put a letter in their file, fired them, ran their butts out of the building, do whatever we did. But that doesn't change behavior. What changes behavior is to influence people to see that things can actually be better if we change us. That's how I see it today. And so, that's just the way I see it. So good question, though.
Well, I don't disagree with it.
I get all fired up there, Joe. Send me go
right.
Fired
no,
up.
I think you're right. I think the question that the reason that it popped for me was like, I understand that I think there's two pieces to it, right? Like you want to make sure that people that you've set a standard that everybody can adhere to. This is what we're going to believe in. These are our core values. If you can move through those pieces with all these situations, the conversation is a little bit different. But I certainly, when you address the behavior that's not where the group has decided that we want to go, it's a different conversation than having it's different conversation than saying this is the standard that I want you to go, right? When the group has defined this is where we're at, you don't get that group in the middle that's like, am I next? Am I next? Am I next? Am I next? Because they've already established that this is the group, this is the norm of the group, this is how we're going to behave. And if they feel like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be next, but they're going to be next, I'm being addressed in a standard that they've all agreed to, it's a different conversation than I'm going to be next because he's coming after me because he doesn't like what I do. It's just different, right?
Yeah,
so if you set it up as a conversation that everybody knows and understands what the expectation is, and they're still not adhering to that expectation, then you can have a conversation. This is what we've all agreed to. And I want to make sure that everybody knows the value that you bring. How can I help you with that? Because I know that that we've all agreed to this. And my job is to help you in that process, as opposed to like, yeah, this is what I see. And I just don't approve, or whatever the case may be, right? You got to be willing to say, we've established that this is the level of excellence that we're looking for. We've established that this is the level that we're all going to adhere to. And my job is to help you get there. And clearly, if you don't feel like you are, then let's try to figure out a way that I can help you get to that spot. If you do feel like you are, tell me more about what that looks like too, because that's a good conversation to have just in terms of clarity of what we're all looking for.
Yeah, Joe, I agree exactly what you just said. And I don't want people to lose the point where the difference is, right? And you said it. The question was, when I walked into 26, that's what I did. I created the culture of fear. Here's why. Because I wasn't part of the initial agreements. I wasn't part of the initial understanding of what was expected of everybody. I came in and just did what I was told to do. What you're sharing is exactly the way you want to do it. That's a different conversation. So I want the audience to understand is that Joe's absolutely right. You have to have the conversation, but this is why it's so important that up front that we when we talk about a vision, right? We talk about this vision, And, Jeff talks about this all the time. What do we hope to become? Right. Then we have this mission of our organization, right? How will we behave on a daily basis in order to achieve and fulfill this mission and this vision, right? So when you talk about these values, that's behavior. The values is how will we behave in the organization, right? What do we hope to become? Those types of things. So when you're that clear and you work with your staff, then the one piece that we have to make sure we have a conversation is, because this is what you're saying, Joe, is, okay, so how are we going to respond when someone is underperforming? We have to have that conversation, and we need to have it now. So when someone is underperforming, then they already knew that, well, we already agreed to how we were going to address that. Remember, you said you wanted to be reminded. So I'm right. And so again, it doesn't mean it's going to fix it for everybody, but it will give us a better result. So I absolutely agree with you on that. It's just what have we established up front? And that's why it's so important. And oftentimes as leaders, because we feel rushed because of time and the pacing of the job, we skip these little steps and then they come back and hurt us. And then the last thing I'll say, I'll let you close this out, is, even Josh says something, and I hear this all the time too. And Josh is absolutely right. It's the idea of addressing the masses was only a few are violating whatever it is they're violating, right? But it is interesting to me sometimes that he used the example of a faculty meeting. And so remember, again, leaders, when we're in faculty meetings and we have these people that sit in the back row or bring materials to the meeting and are doing other things that they shouldn't be doing, all these types of things, whatever we see out there that we are that we are bothered by, I'm going to ask a few questions. Number one, what are we doing about that? Number two, this isn't a question, but it's a mantra. People will behave however we allow them to behave. Number three, why are they sitting in the back row? Why do they always sit there? Why do they never participate? I don't know. But you know what we better do? We better find out, because there is a reason for it, right?
Right.
And if we don't know that, it kind of goes back to this thing that we're always talking about, right? And that is the foundation of relationships and trust and bringing value to people. But we have to find out why people behave the way they behave. That's at least my thoughts. So,
and they may not have any malintent at all in terms of how they're in that spot. They may just be like, "That's how I feel. This is what works for me, and this is how I've been allowed to do it, or whatever." And until we understand why they feel that way, then we better, if we haven't asked the question, we got to think about what we're actually doing there. And this way, I remember one of my first staff meetings in the last school district that I was in. It was a district-wide meeting, and I was doing some coordination for that group. And one of the people at the meeting just came in and she started knitting, just knitting. And my first initial thought, as like I said, as like a 29-year-old, principal, and I was coordinating a group at the time as well. I'm like, you're not going to be like focused on me and giving me eye contact the whole time. Like, what is wrong? Like, how can you do it? You're going to sit there and knit. And then I got through the first meeting, and it kind of distracted me a lot. And I had a conversation with her after, and she was so nice. She's like the nicest person ever. And she goes, I just want to say thank you for letting me bring my stuff. I just have a lot of anxiety, and this really makes me concentrate a little bit more. Yeah. I just want to say thank you for that. And I'm like, I was about ready to ask her the question, am I boring you while you knit? And it was the exact opposite. She was doing it so she could stay engaged with my crazy talk all over the board, right? And I was so happy that she said something, and I wish I didn't even think about it. This is the first time I've thought about it in years, actually. But she was willing to have the conversation about why she was doing that. So until we ask the question, if we're going to make an assumption of what people are doing and why they're doing it without asking the question, that's not on them at all. That's on us. And there might be a really good reason that they sit in the back. There might be a really good reason that they have other stuff with them just to make sure that they can concentrate. Now, if they're grading papers and doing that's like, then have the conversation. But if they're doing something that if they sit in the back because it's better for their anxiety, if they sit in the front because they want to make sure that they're like right in front of you, then because they want to pay attention and it keeps their focus, Like, just ask them the question, man. Like, don't make an assumption of why they're there.
Yeah. The assumptions is absolutely true, Joe. You know what? I thought you were going to tell me. I thought you were going to tell me when it was over, you walked up and your mom said to you, Joe, I needed this for a year. I thought you were going to tell me it was your mom sitting in the front row.
My mom would not sit in the front row. No, she sits in the back.
Your mom would be in the back row. Your mom would be like this, like, oh my God, Joe.
There he goes.
Joe, why do you have to scream so loud, Joe?
Talking.
Joe, why do you have to scream so loud?
I know. Oh my gosh. She said,
my mom would be in the front row praying the rosary. Oh, Dios mío. Por favor. Ayúdame.
I'll tell you, Jimmy, my mom is louder than I am. Like, my mom, when she walks into a track meet, everybody knows that
I'm calling false on that. You
ask anybody. Jimmy, I'm not even joking. Ask anybody. It's ridiculous. It's so funny because I missed the track meet on Tuesday and my mom was at the track meet, and I got to the track meet yesterday and I kept listening. I'm like, my mom lives 4 hours away or 3 hours away. And I kept listening, like, is mom here? I don't know her mom. Like, I don't hear her because I hear her right away. As soon as the track meet starts, she's screaming, "Go Crickets," everywhere she goes. And I was like, I said to two parents I was with, I'm like, I don't know if my mom's here. And one of them said, well, she's not. She's in New York. And I said, what do you mean she's in New York? Well, she's like, yeah, she's in New York. She's with your sister in New York. I'm like, how do you know she's out? She said, well, she told us on Tuesday when she was here, which she didn't tell you. I'm like, how is, like, everybody knows who she is. Everybody knows my mom because two things. She yells as loud as she possibly can. And she sits in the back row at basketball games and she wears the paint out. She does this the whole game, right? So on Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day, Mom. And I love you, but I'll tell you, you're louder than I am. And you need to understand that. That creates anxiety for me.
And Joe, I can't think of a better way to end this session today other than saying Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there, to moms that are school leaders, to the moms that are not even school leaders, whether you're an educator, whatever your role is in schools. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you. Remember how important it is to make sure you're still being a mom first before you're a principal. And God bless you for what you do. Thank you for joining us on the show. And thank you for allowing Joe and I just to talk about what we want to talk about. And remember, that's what we love to do this. It's because we're always constantly just listening and learning from others. The comments and the feedback that was in here today was awesome. Thank you. It's a great way to cause us to reflect. I got some reflecting to do even after today. Like, I'm thinking about things. I'm like, I got to go back and revisit some things in my head too, right? I just got to go back and revisit that. But I'm going to take some time to process this show today. But thank you. And if you have a chance, we hope we see you again next week. We have no idea what day it'll be, but we will surely make that announcement. But thank you for joining us on the weekly show with Jimmy and Joe. Joe, I'll let you close it out, my friend.
All right, everybody. May we all know that it's always about leadership. Leadership always, and leadership always. We hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Hope you had a great Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you to all the leaders in classrooms, in departments, in schools and districts that make it possible to inspire kids across the country. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Go Crickets.
Right. God bless you, Joe. Have a great day, buddy.